Good evening, everyone. I have to admit I am an Ignite virgin, so it's my first time up here. I represent a company called Yark Data. I'm the global head of life sciences, and it's a startup out of Cray Incorporated. I don't know if you're familiar with Cray. It's the supercomputer company. The reason why I brought that up is our technology has about $500 million of investment in it, and it was really brought together through a government project to look at terror threat analysis. So it was really the first example of using graph analytics at scale to get new insight from big data. And so our task was now to commercialize this. So I want to spend the time talking about graph analytics and what it actually brings to scientific research. I have a biology background by training, so I'll talk a bit about, in that context. So a lot of people have big data projects ongoing, and they're just trying to figure out, as was alluded to in the previous talks, the magic just doesn't happen. You have to get up and start doing something with the data. And the value comes in, or the killer app, is actually finding the unknown bits, or the knowledge that's within that data, looking for the signal and the noise, if you will. And if you look at a lot of the recent discoveries, they were by accident. Let's look at Viagra, for example. It was a failed cardiac drug. They had an adverse event that kept popping up that gave rise to a new indication, right? And so what we want to do is systematize that ability to discover. And so we want to work in the area of the things you don't know and the questions you're not asking. Most analytic tools or platforms are the known unknowns. How can I get my answer faster and better? Whereas we want to let the data, almost the follow your nose concept. Discovery is hard because there's data silos, many formats of data, structured, unstructured, semi-structured data. And the data structure determines the questions you can ask of it, or the questions tell you how to build the structure of that data. Well, that's not how you discover things. Using a graph analytics approach, you have that ability to let the data tell you what's important and what's the next question to ask. And that, therefore, you can build up these networks of biological information, patient information. You'll see it in social networks now. You can see it in scientific research. And the whole idea is, again, to foster that ability to discover. In the case of, I'd like to bring your attention to a project we did with the Institute for Systems Biology. And the idea was, could I use a data-only approach to find new cancer treatments? So what they did was they took the Cancer Genome Atlas together with a multitude of other data sets, UniProt, PFAM, and Medline. And you can see that these data sets are very rich. They've got protein information, genomic information, RNA-seq information, image information, and be able to search across that data to find, again, new relationships in that data, and then serve that up to the researcher. And so we're looking at graphs they're sizable, in the billions of triples, if you're familiar with semantic technology. And the idea was, if I want to find more data, I can just augment that data set. And I can go through this iterative hypothesis testing, rapid hypothesis testing. And our researcher was able to report that he could get through 1,000 hypotheses in the time it used to take him to do one. So you can start thinking about building up these networks, being able to visualize them, and look at gene-drug interactions, looking at mutations across disease areas, and then look for new indications for drugs. So in this case, they actually found an HIV drug that was selected for a breast cancer target, which was quite interesting in itself. Excuse me. And they actually found thousands of these sort of drug repurposing opportunities. And the idea is now you go off and do the scientific testing and validation. Another good example is looking at patient outcomes from your hospital networks and then saying, okay, what cohort does this patient belong to? What was the outcome of that cohort? And how can I, as a physician, guide the treatment of that patient? And finally, to do graph analytics, this is why we're here. You need specialized compute power. You need large shared memory. And, excuse me, the fact is the value of automating graph analytics, time, obviously, hypothesis testing, test 1,000 hypotheses in a time to test one. Your data scientists are no longer data gatherers. They're actually doing analytics. And finally, you're not predefining what the data means by putting it into a relational data model. You're actually maintaining the value of that data based on what the query is telling you about that data and where you want to follow that data. So with that, thank you for your time.